All right, let's talk about America's most critical partnerships. I bet names like the UK or Japan pop into your head, right? Well, today we're diving into one that's just as crucial, but it operates kind of in the shadows. I'm talking about the deep and maybe even fragile reliance the US has on India. We're going to peel back the usual headlines and get into what's really at stake here.
And to really get our heads around it, we're going to kick things off with a simple, but honestly, a pretty powerful question. What if, just overnight, the flow of talent, of medicine, of all that cooperation from India just stopped? Poof. Gone.
Yeah, because let's be real, something would break. So in this explainer, we're going to do just that. We're going to break it all down, piece by piece, sector by sector, and see what the real-world fallout would look like and just how fast it would hit us.
You know, what's so wild about this whole thing is that most of it is hidden in plain sight. It's like the foundation of a house. You don't really think about it, but it's holding everything up. It's the silent support system running in the background of America's biggest, most important industries. And honestly, most of us don't even notice it's there. Okay, so we're going to tackle 4 key areas. First, the tech workforce, the brains behind Silicon Valley. Then, the medicines that fill our pharmacy shelves. After that, the brilliant students who fuel our universities. And finally, the big one, the strategic partnership that literally shapes global politics. All right, let's start with the very first domino to topple, and it would fall fast. I'm talking about the American tech industry. Just picture it. Google, Apple, Microsoft, all the giants. Now imagine the huge chunk of their best and brightest talent, from the top executives all the way down to the coders in the labs, just vanishes. What happens then? I mean, the difference is just night and day. On one side, you've got this incredible engine of innovation, just humming along, powered by some of the best minds in the world. But on the other side, total stagnation. Projects would screech to a halt. The race to invent the next big thing would just stall out. And America's edge in the global tech scene, it would start to go dull, like right away. You can almost hear a tech CEO saying it, right? It's not a slowdown, it's a full-on seizure. The whole engine we count on for, progress and growth would be in serious trouble. So the takeaway here is huge. This isn't just some little hiccup. It's a threat to the very foundation of the industry. Okay, so let's shift gears. We're moving from the world of bits and bytes to something way more personal, our health. Because here, the reliance isn't on software code, it's on the actual life-saving medicines that, we all have in our homes. And the chain reaction here is, well, it's scary fast. Look, India is basically the pharmacy of the world. They're the biggest supplier of generic drugs, making up something like 40% of what's used in the US. So if that supply chain just snaps, it wouldn't take long at all for pharmacy shelves to start looking bare. And that leads to critical shortages in hospitals. We're talking about everything from basic antibiotics to crucial anesthetics. And this is where it really hits home, right? Just think for a second about the medicine that you, or maybe your parents or your kids, rely on every single day. Could that prescription suddenly become hard to find? Or maybe even impossible to get? The tough reality is that for a lot of people, the answer would be yes. All right, next up, let's talk about where all the future talent and big ideas come from, America's universities. Because this is another one of those areas where the dependency is huge, but it's one we just don't talk about very much. So why would they panic? Well, for universities, this would be a total multi-front crisis. First, they'd lose all these brilliant grad students who are basically the engine room for their research labs. Second, they'd take a massive financial hit from lost tuition. And maybe most importantly, that whole pipeline of new graduates in science, tech, engineering, and math, the STEM fields, it would start to run dry. Okay, so now let's pull the camera back a bit. We've talked about the impact at home, but let's look at the global stage. Because this isn't just about money or school, this is about the high-stakes chess match of geopolitics. I mean, the US and India are partners in so many critical areas. You've got defense, right? Think about those big Malabar naval exercises. That's the US, India, Japan, and Australia all working together. That's a huge deal. Then you have space exploration, where they're sharing research for joint missions. And in global politics, they're working together to counter threats they both face. You pull that partnership out of the equation, suddenly the US has a weaker hand to play, and honestly, the world becomes a less stable place. So here's the bottom line on this. We are way past just talking about simple trade deals here. This reliance, this partnership, it's literally woven into the fabric of American foreign policy and national security. And hey, just so we're all on the same page, when we say geopolitical balancing, it's really simple. It just means countries teaming up to make sure no single nation gets too powerful and starts throwing its weight around. It's a super important strategy for keeping things stable. Okay, so we've walked through tech, medicine, universities, and the global game board. Let's bring it all home now and finally answer that big question we asked at the very beginning. What breaks first? So here's the timeline of how it would all go down. The very first thing to snap, tech. The pain there would be almost immediate. Then give it a few weeks and you'd see the pharmaceutical supply chains start to crack and crumble. The hit to universities, that would be a slower burn, playing out over semesters. And last, the strategic alliances. Those would weaken more gradually, over time, as the whole global map starts to shift. And that brings us to the final thought. Look, this whole conversation isn't about pointing fingers or saying one way is good or bad. It's really just about understanding the incredibly complex web of connections that holds our world together. Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. In a world that is changing faster than ever, just how strong, how resilient is this silent but incredibly powerful reliance?